this show. Love is in the air for this bride-to-be.
There she goes. In for a treat.
Oh my God!
We find out the secrets to a successful marriage.
Not sex, is it?
And love really does bite.
I drink blood about once a month.
As we're invited to a vampire wedding.
Coffin Man.
I'm not gonna burst into flames or anything.
But first, a wedding hanging on a thread.
I didn't know if the nerves were really gonna get to me. Didn't know if I was gonna be able to do it.
At 400 feet high, if anything were to go wrong, it'd be game over, and you know, we would die.
This is Mickey and Purple, a couple of slackliners from Colorado.
Slacklining is like tightrope walking, but we don't use a big cable to balance. We're walking on slackline webbing, which is essentially flat rope. But, there's the adventure element of slacklining, which is going out and setting up a high line and walking in a space that no human has ever, been before.
What I love about highlining in particular is the combination of the physical and the mental focus. So it's almost like a full body meditation while you're also being physically active.
And slacklining wasn't the only passion this pair seemed to share.
I do remember meeting her very vividly. She had beautiful blue eyes and a really great conversationalist and really smart.
And I was impressed that he was an all-around slackliner. He does all of the different types of slacklining, and I respected him for that.
Our first few dates were her coming over to my backyard where I had trees and slacklines rigged, and she was helping me set up slacklines because she's very smart. I think that's one of the things that draws us to each other so much is our passion for living a diverse and balanced life.
Going steady has a whole new meaning with these two.
Will you marry me?
Yes, of course.
But when it came to planning for their big day, Mickey and Purple were far from restrained.
We knew we wanted to rig a net between a canyon, and we knew we wanted to walk slacklines out to our wedding.
Thankfully, Purple, who is a teacher, had already started the ball rolling.
I had started building a space net with the 10th grade that I was teaching in Los Angeles. And I was doing it as part of our physics class. And after we got engaged, we just all of a sudden thought, we need to use this net in our wedding.
The net is awesome. The net is sweet. The net is sick. The star net is about 25 feet across, from point to point. The canyon that we picked to have the wedding at was about 400 feet deep. And we were spanning our net right across the middle of it.
The canyon the couple aimed to get married over was the infamous Fruit Bowl in Moab, Utah. But Purple's mum had her reservations. No kidding.
I'm not sure that my mom was really sold on the idea of having a slackline wedding over a canyon. She did suggest that, maybe we rethink the idea, and wouldn't it be nice to be married in a church somewhere?
My friends and family were extremely supportive of the idea. They knew me, they knew what I'd been doing for the last, few years, and it made sense to everybody.
I think Mickey was very helpful in explaining that we had all of these safety measures in place to try to quell her fears, but I do think she was afraid for us.
Jimmy, you can let yours down. Let it out.
So, after some extra safety precautions were added, the couple set about making this outrageous wedding a reality.
The location that we chose, we had been there a number of times before. We knew where all of the bolts were, and we knew that we could set up an elaborate system with this net and other slack lines and the rope swing and everything.
All of it, Nick?
What about that? It wasn't just like show up at the church and get married, you know. We had to make sure that the slack lines were the right tension, and every single slack line had a backup slack line or backup rope, because at 400 feet high, if anything were to go wrong, it'd be game over.
Later,
I was a little more in my comfort zone in that suit than Purple was in her super flowing dress.
it's a fine line between getting married
Even scooting out on the line, didn't know if I was going to be able to do it.
or dying. Next, a couple with an unusual thirst for love.
I drink blood about once a month.
Coffin Man.
I cannot deal very well with sunlight. It makes me physically very ill. I'm not going to burst into flames or anything.
When Logan and Daly met a little over 10 years ago, it was love at first bite, as they're real-life, actual practicing vampires.
My best friend actually introduced us, and we just kind of connected right at that moment and found out that we were both vampires.
I immediately felt this incredible connection. She just bounced right into my life as the perkiest little goth vampire ball of energy that I've ever seen.
I was pretty sure that I wanted to marry Logan almost right away.
We definitely started having those conversations probably a little bit earlier than a lot of people would, but it was very comfortable.
Daly and Logan are club promoters and each year host the Vampire Ball, the biggest night in the vampire calendar. And it was here that Logan took the opportunity to pop the question.
My love, my life, Daly Catherine, will you marry me?
The proposal was absolutely amazing. He brought me up on stage, I had had a couple drinks, so I was already like feeling emotional. And he started, talking like he was gonna do something, and I just immediately started crying. Like, I was just a mess. It was an absolutely magical moment. Logan was crying, I was crying, my mom was in the front row crying, it was absolutely amazing. I could not have asked for a better proposal.
It was an incredible moment, and she broke down into the most hysterical happy tears that I've ever seen anyone make, and she looked beautiful in that moment. It was something really special, and I replay that moment in my head a lot.
I love you so much, baby.
How did these two kindred spirits know that they were vampires in the first place, apart from the lack of vitamin D?
I'm primarily nocturnal, so it makes it very difficult to do all of the regular shopping outings and things that are usually found in daylight hours, because I cannot deal very well with sunlight. It makes me physically very ill. I'm not going to burst into flames or anything.
Coffin Man.
So I awakened as a vampire at 15 years old. I was actually sitting in class and I started to notice that I was feeling extremely dehydrated, extremely thirsty, and I wasn't really sure why. I had thought back and I thought, well, I had plenty of water today. And so I kind of started to panic a little bit. And at that point I saw one of my friends and I said, this is what I'm experiencing, like, what is this? And they're like, come with me, like, let's see if this works. And so I went and that was the first time that I tried blood, and the thirst was immediately quenched. Okay.
Woo, it's home.
Someone who drinks blood is known as a sanguinarian, and both Daly and Logan are fully committed to the cause.
Home. Bye!
I drink blood about once a month, sometimes twice a month, depending on how my energy levels are.
There is no just gouging someone in the throat with your fangs or any of that. We use a lancet. A lancet is a tiny little medical device used predominantly from people with diabetes to prick the end of their finger and test their blood sugar. It works so quickly, so easily.
For me, it not only satiates a thirst that I feel is very physical, but also definitely brings up my mental capabilities, my immune system.
So we can get what we need from our donor very safely, without issue, without risk.
A donor is someone who donates their blood and are often known as black swans. They're non-vampires, but are attracted to vampires. And in this case, it's Logan's girlfriend.
Logan's girlfriend, I absolutely had to have her be part of the wedding because she's family. I don't feel any jealousy towards her. We actually did used to date, and then I honestly didn't have any time to commit to another relationship other than my husband, especially while I was getting married. We just kind of decided just to be friends, and I just supported her relationship with Logan. So Logan's girlfriend was one of my bridesmaids.
So, such an unorthodox lifestyle meant the wedding was never going to be run-of-the-mill.
I actually walked down the aisle in a full set of custom armor, and it was spectacular.
We wanted something that was extravagant. We wanted people to walk into our wedding and say, "This is Logan and Daly." Walking down the aisle towards Logan was absolutely amazing. I felt like I was floating. I honestly wish I could have had that moment last forever. So neither of us had ever seen the vows. We didn't know what each other was writing.
Oh wow, I wrote a lot, huh? From the moment I first saw you, I knew that I had always known you.
I was nervous about how I was going to react, if I was going to react enough. I felt like if I didn't cry, then she was going to hit me.
I vow to love not only the separate pieces of you, but the entirety of your being as the beautiful and complete puzzle that you are. So to actually say them out loud on stage in front of each other was really a very emotional moment.
I'm a very controlled person. I compartmentalize. But I was this blubbering little schoolboy.
I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may seal the union with a kiss.
The biggest, most extreme part of our wedding was definitely the rose petal cannons. We wanted something very big upon our first kiss. So there were just thousands of rose petals falling down on us, and it was just the perfect end to the perfect ceremony.
The couple had such a good time, they now get married every year.
No, we'll get remarried again. Do it.
Always get remarried. I will marry you every year.
Let's do it.
Choosing who can and can't come to your wedding is a big deal. So the last thing you want is a bunch of uninvited guests. Like in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, this groom is in a right flap because despite the beautiful setting, a swarm of insects have decided to crash the wedding.
And you're an irreplaceable part of their past and future.
And it looks like they're in no hurry to buzz off.
The greatest gifts that life has given them.
Bugging them all the way through their ceremony. But they aren't the only pests to plague a wedding. In Masulkapa in India, this wedding descended into chaos when a tiger joined the celebrations. The guests scramble to safety on a roof terrace, while the cool cat assesses the party. But eventually, he decides it's not wild enough for him and retreats back to the forest. Luckily, no one was hurt. Unlike this driver in Russia, the driver attempted to swerve around a wedding convoy, but instead ended up dangerously crashing their party. The group raced to help the driver, who's now trapped under the wreckage. And together, they managed to lift the totaled car off him and pull him to safety. Unbelievably, the driver suffered only minor injuries. But it just goes to show, sometimes you can't control your big day going without a hitch. As well as the ups in married life, there are inevitably the downs. because the path to true love very rarely runs smoothly. But there are some couples whose relationships have stood the test of time.
We've been married 60 years. I hope we last another 60.
And after decades of wedded bliss,
I still like to hold her and kiss her.
A big softie.
I never, ever go to bed at night without giving Calvin a kiss. And it's lovely.
they know all the secrets to a successful marriage.
Not sex, is it?
This is Bernie and June, who in 1958 had a whirlwind romance.
We got married at St Martin's Church in Grimsby on the 29th of August 1958, and that's when I was trembly.
1959?
No. Oh yeah, it was. Oh, sorry. It was 1959.
Bernie was 21 and June just 20 when these two lovebirds first met.
We met
in the pet shop, and I went in to inquire if I could export an English canary to Singapore.
And that was the first time I set eyes on Bernard. Then we met at Mary's 21st birthday, my auntie, and then he asked me to dance, didn't you?
When I first took her in my arms to do the waltz with her, I knew then that I loved her.
We waltzed all night.
Bernie swept the young June off her feet, but even though at the time it was illegal to marry without your parents' consent before turning 21 in England, it didn't put Bernie off.
I met her on the Saturday night and proposed to marry her on the Wednesday at Skegness Seaside Resort.
Kitty Cat Snack Bar.
In the, of all places, a Kitty Cat Snack Bar, yeah.
And he said to me, would you marry me? And I said yes, straight away. Couldn't resist. And I went home and told Mum and Dad, and they says, well, yes, you can get engaged, but you can't marry till you're 21. It was about 10 months.
After only 4 days of romance, Bernie clearly doesn't hang about. So the postponement was frustrating, but good things come to those who wait.
Started walking down the aisle, started trembling, and I could see Bernard there waiting, and I couldn't get up there quick enough. It was lovely, it really was.
I had to wait while the veil was lifted. Oh, that's when we were allowed to have a kiss. Yes. Very emotional. Very emotional.
Yeah, you still get emotional, don't you?
But what do this experienced couple think of modern relationships?
The modern marriages, I don't think they'll last like ours has done.
The vows that we take and that we took are sacred.
And even after spending 6 decades with one another, the love between them still burns bright.
The marriage has got stronger and stronger.
Yeah, more mature.
But you do still kiss.
Oh,
because
yes, certainly do.
We kiss quite a lot, don't we?
So what is the happy couple's secret for a successful marriage?
Oh, heck.
Not sex, is it? Screw that one.
Oh, Bernard.
Earlier, we saw Mickey and Purple suspend a huge net over a 100-metre-high canyon called the Fruit Bowl, where they hope to get married.
The morning of the wedding, I was feeling pretty good, and it all felt perfect. I don't think I had any second thoughts or any nerves or anything like that. I was a little more in my comfort zone in that suit than Purple was in her super flowing dress, which is just crazy to think about slacklining in. What with, you know, the chances of stepping on the dress or having the sash blow in your face or whatever.
I think I was so focused on everything that I needed to do. I had to wear my climbing harness underneath my wedding dress, so I think that's probably pretty unusual. And just checking all of my safety gear almost took my mind off of the nervousness of just having this be your wedding day.
And when you're over 100 metres up about to walk on a slackline just 2 inches wide, getting married would be the last thing on anyone's mind.
I walked from the alcove out to the tiny net, moved my leash to the next line, and walked down to the big net. I was just jazzed. Felt right. Felt like everything was coming together perfectly.
When you're highlining, you can't start walking from the cliff because it's very dangerous for you to fall. If you take one step onto the slackline and then fall, you're very likely to swing back and hit the edge of the cliff, which is not a good thing. So I started a few feet out and stood up, and immediately I could tell that the wind was just incredible. There was this updraft that was playing with my dress the whole time, and I hadn't had experience with that. I didn't really know how to deal with that.
Not only was the dress proving a problem, over 100 guests were watching on in anticipation.
I did feel extra pressure walking a slackline to my wedding, and I didn't know if the nerves were really gonna get to me. And I actually didn't know if I was gonna be able to do it, if I had the mental focus in me that day to walk that slackline in this long dress. So I actually just looked straight ahead. I looked at Mickey and had him as my focus point. I stood up and I just thought, okay, I'm just walking one step and another step until I get there. And it worked.
Once both were safely on the space net floating over 100 metres up, the wedding could commence.
Mickey, with all my love, I take you to be my husband.
The exchanging of the vows. Purple prepared a beautiful speech.
I will try to be understanding and to trust in you completely.
I just spoke from the heart and told her how I felt.
I'm in love with you, and I'm so happy that we're doing this.
One of the biggest things about Purple is that I feel like she makes me want to be a better person. You know, she really does.
Together we will face all of life's experiences and share one another's dreams and goals.
Purple also spoke from the heart, but with a little more practiced cadence, and she knew, you know, she had written down and thought out what she wanted to say.
By the power vested in me by the state of Utah, I am so stoked to pronounce you husband and wife.
And Tim looks at us and goes, I pronounce you man and wife. Everybody's cheering, and we now know that it's time for us to pull our big surprise, our big move. And I look at her, and I kind of went, because we're standing right next to the hole, I go, do you want me to pick you up? She looks at me and she goes, yeah, Mickey, pick me up. So I basically just get my footing, I'm like, all right, let's do this. Pick her up, and I'm holding her like this. And I go, okay, you ready? Okay, here we go. And I didn't say anything else, I just stepped off into the void. And we went just whooshing, screaming through the canyon on this 200-foot-long rope swing. And then everything just got quiet because all of a sudden we were 200 feet away from everything in below the canyon.
Yeah, I just felt like I was in his arms swinging through the canyon, and it was so beautiful, and I just looked at him and thought, wow, this is my husband now.
It was a perfect end to the wedding.
prehistoric wedding for archaic reasons.
The first thing that it said on the green card application was, you need to get married.
My German side of the family, no one had an idea.
You may kiss your bride.
This is Chloe and Arne, who met while Chloe was studying in Germany, where the romance continued to blossom even after she had returned home to the US.
Chloe and I had a long-distance relationship across the ocean for roughly 2 years.
I slightly had it in the back of my head that like we would be able to figure it out if we focused on communication, saw each other when we could.
Chloe's mum and dad, Jeff and Christina, were a lot more sceptical about the relationship.
She said that we were going to meet him one day, and I was like, okay. I mean, it's no big deal. We haven't heard much about him. It's just a fling. And then
fling?
That's what I thought. Maybe just a boy,
Dad's
but nothing serious.
I never thought it was just a fling.
Dad Jeff turned out to be right, and it was much more than a fling. But there was a problem.
After graduating, I think it's fair to say that I moved to the US because of Chloe.
But we had to see what the green card entails. And the first thing that it said on the green card application was, you need to get married.
Because of the timeline and maybe him having to go back if they didn't start it immediately. So we thought they were very distraught about that and not having an official wedding in a church.
If the couple didn't get married, Arne could face deportation.
We didn't have enough time to prepare a big wedding, so we decided to separate those two things, take care of the legal aspects first, and for us, one of those ways of not attaching a lot of emotional meaning to it was by actually doing something weird.
So the bride's mum got involved to save the day.
When my mom first told us and said, hey, what about like dinosaur costumes? I think in my head, my first thing was, oh no, here we go again.
Chloe and Arne, they accepted the fact that Christina is crazy and thought that was a halfway decent idea.
Even though it was mainly Chloe's mum's idea, on the morning of the wedding, reality started to bite.
I absolutely never pictured myself walking my daughter, Chloe, down the aisle
in any
kind of get-up besides a wedding dress.
Once we got into the church and we were trying them on, it was pretty much let me not trip on my shoes because I can't see. Let's make sure that Arne's not going to trip on me, and also kind of like let's not rip this like outfit that's inflated.
It's really hard to maneuver in them because they are so wide in the back, and even if you look down, you can't see your feet.
When I had to walk Chloe down the aisle, I was thinking, okay, this is funny, blah, 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 no problem.
Chloe walked in with her dad. That was the first time that I thought, oh yeah, this is actually something real, and this is something with emotions attached to it.
And danged if I didn't get right to her, coming in the door, and I was like a freaking waterworks. I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is typical.
I got nervous and started crying on my dad walking down the aisle because it was still legitimate. My name was being changed.
She was still having the same question.
Yeah.
Should I or shouldn't I? Should I bail? Then I'm gonna be a dinosaur running down the road.
A runaway dinosaur was a potential issue, but it was no way as huge as the German elephant in the room.
My German side of the family, no one had an idea that we were getting married in dinosaur costumes.
And you promise to be to her a true and devoted husband, forsaking all others, and cleave to her and to her only until death do you part.
Yes, I do.
We didn't think his parents would like it at all. And then...
And he was very nervous about it.
And he was nervous about that.
And they were flying 5,000 miles to get here.
Yeah, and they were flying over here to
go to a wedding.
For a wedding.
Yeah.
I was a bit worried that we were misunderstood in what we were doing, or that we were maybe disrespecting this whole marriage thing or something.
Once we got down there, I think someone waved. I don't know. They were like the first aisle, so it didn't make sense, but it was nice to have them all there.
Their faces were like this in the beginning. And then it was cool after that.
Luckily, the reaction was very positive.
Arnold, you may kiss your bride.
It'll certainly be a wedding no one will forget for a very long time.
The thing that sticks out would be when they were running through the church hand in hand, actually kind of backwards with their little tails, wiggling. That was very cute.
I would think that my family thought it was an outrageous wedding, but it also felt very natural.
We both had fun, I think. And I think that Arna and I both like having fun together, so I'd definitely do it again.
We might even make it a family tradition, and every descendant has to get married in dinosaur costumes from now on.
There are many memories to treasure about a good wedding, but one has to be a smashing speech.
For those of you that know, I'd be more comfortable with a fiddle in my hand than I was with a microphone.
Take this mean fiddler in Ireland.
You're all very welcome to this wedding, which is fancy.
It might not be the traditional sort of speech, but he managed to string along the captive audience with his clever limericks for over 10 minutes.
And from their first encounter, they got on like a house on fire.
But sometimes actions speak louder than words, and this father of the bride had the wedding party in stitches.
As you probably know, I'm a man of few words, so I hope you...
After some heartfelt words and a toast to the happy couple, it was a true case of bottoms up. After the toastmaster pulls back his chair a little too far, giving the old man not only the biggest laugh of the day, but memories as well as injuries that'll last a while, which this best man can also relate to. Because after 15 minutes of waxing lyrical to the bridal party, he decides to nonchalantly toss his speech onto the top table. Relieved that he didn't crash and burn, he takes his seat, blissfully unaware that his speech has in fact landed in a candle. Luckily, the quick-thinking toastmaster rushes the paper into the kitchen, preventing the entire wedding from going up in flames. To ensure a best man speech goes exactly to plan, a bride needs a bridesmaid they can rely on. And Tiffany's the best in the business.
Oh my God!
Brides hire her to avoid any nuptial nightmares.
One of the bridesmaids got nail varnish on her dress.
But there's a twist.
I can't have the other bridesmaids knowing that I'm undercover.
The story is, she's a long-lost friend.
I have apparently known the bride since we were on gap year together.
But the truth is, they barely know each other.
This is actually all complete rubbish. I met the bride 6 weeks ago.
She's the undercover bridesmaid.
I've just got to pull it off. So I'm often asked by brides to help with absolutely anything to do with their wedding. And at the moment I've got a bride who's called me up and is petrified about the best man's speech. He's a little bit of a lad's lad, he can be quite controversial. I think she's slightly nervous about the sort of stories he might come up with, that he might offend people, that he might say something a little bit inappropriate.
So Tiffany is off to her office to have a frank and honest discussion with Stefan, the best man her bride is having nightmares about.
Hello. Stefan. I can see you. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Tiffany, how are you?
Good, I'm good. So, as you know, Laura has kind of called me up in a bit of a panic about your best man speech.
No surprises there.
I know. Well, I think she's slightly nervous that you might say something a little bit inappropriate. So what sort of things are you going to say?
My starting point is, like something like, so Dave was in the rugby team at uni, which is where they met.
Yeah.
Loads of girlfriends he had when he was, when he was playing rugby.
Yeah,
and
no, stop there. Definitely do not mention loads of other girlfriends. It makes him sound slutty, and no one wants a slutty groom at a wedding. What other things are you thinking of saying?
Lots of stories from when we used to go out, we used to do lots of stuff. But now you're telling me I can't use the girlfriend one, so I've got that's half of my material gone.
Okay, well done.
And I've known her for a long time as well. So I was gonna maybe bring in things that she's done in the past, and I know you're gonna tell me I can't.
Oh, well, it depends what sort of things you're gonna bring up. Nice stories about the bride, not things that are gonna humiliate her.
So no I can't bring up ex-girlfriends. So I can't talk about this. So Dave was nearly engaged once before,
right.
And we all thought he was going to marry her. I mean, she was incredible.
What do you mean she was incredible? In what way?
It's just stunning.
Okay, absolutely do not mention that in the wedding speech. This is an ex-girlfriend that you thought he was going to marry, that you all thought was stunning. Absolutely do not mention that. Forget that ex-girlfriend, okay? She must not make any sort of appearance in this speech. Oh my goodness. I can see why she was worried. Okay, so kind of top tips for best man speech. Try not to kind of offend anyone. Be very, very careful with inside jokes. So if you and your kind of like little group of lads have kind of funny inside jokes that you guys are going to find brilliant to bring up, but no one else in the wedding is going to understand, then don't do it.
So I've been married for 10 years. So I was going to say, but when you realise that once you get married, that's it. That's, you don't have sex anymore. You just start talking about kids, that kind of thing.
Okay, that you're basically saying that getting married is horrific.
I'm trying to bring a bit of humour.
Yeah, but that's not humour. That's going to
This is my moment for a bit of humour.
That's going to petrify the bride and the groom and everyone else in that room. You cannot do that.
So nothing about wives becoming nagging once you no?
No, nothing about wives becoming nagging.
Ball and chain?
No. Okay, oh my goodness. Why don't you start trying to actually write the speech, and then you can send me an example of it and I can kind of go through it and see if you're on the
with your red pen.
With my red pen. Exactly.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Okay, speak to you later.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my God, honestly, I am freaking out about this. So there is a tendency for best men when they're given this role and they know they have to do the speech to suddenly think that like overnight they've got to turn into this amazing comic. And the obvious thing to do for them is to turn to smut. Hey, let's bring up sex, let's bring up ex-girlfriends, let's bring up really inappropriate things that are gonna have the grannies cringing away. You cannot do that. So I am just crossing all my fingers that the advice that I've given him is actually going to kind of go into that head of his and onto that piece of paper so that he can actually give a speech that Laura will be happy with.
Next. Love is in the air.
Then for a treat.
When an elaborate proposal leaves a bride-to-be on cloud 9.
It was not the ride that I was expecting in the best way.
This is Brady and Paige from South Dakota in the US.
I met Brady when we were both in college, and we love going on new adventures, traveling the world, seeing new places. We've gone skydiving together. We've gone kayaking with humpback whales in Hawaii. Anything that has to do with adrenaline, I'm all for it.
And so, when the idea of parasailing came up whilst on vacation in Mexico with Brady's family, Paige was all for it.
The plan was for her to go first, and then I would go after her. But, back in my mind, I wasn't actually planning on going parasailing. It was just to get her up there.
I had no idea that Brady was planning to propose. He did a great job of keeping it under wraps.
I did encourage Paige to take some video while parasailing. I said, take some footage of us waving down below. But little did she know that I would actually be proposing and wanted to make sure she captured some of that.
As Paige takes to the sky...
There she goes. She's in for a treat.
Brady gathers his family and puts his romantic proposal plan into action.
Each family member's role was pretty similar. A lot of them they took giant oars, and that's how they wrote the letters in the sand. I was quite nervous, but I was also very excited. She had no inkling of what was going on or what was happening.
I was enjoying the ride a lot. I was just excited to be up there and have a view. It was a very cool view.
As Paige heads back along the beach,
There's our hotel.
something catches her eye.
And there's the group.
Took me a second to realize what was going on, but once I did, I was just very overwhelmed. And I could see everyone yelling and waving at me.
Oh my God!
I realized, that this is happening and this is the moment that every girl dreams of, and so I was so excited.
Oh my God!
I mean, there was definitely a little part of me that, thought that, there is a chance that she could say no and it would be a total disaster.
Yeah!
But luckily, she said yes, and the rest is history.
Wanted to say yes and give him a hug, but I had to land the parasail before I could do so. So it was just kind of a emotion of like, okay, this is fun, but get me down because I want to see my fiance.
I was, very anxious to have her hit the ground and to get on one knee and to ask her to marry me.
He was standing there with his swimsuit and a tie and a dozen roses. And he gave his speech, and I was just kind of at a loss for words, honestly.
Her reaction was wonderful. It made me feel great. And it was truly a magnificent moment.
Paige and Brady have had their fair share of adventures since, including a fairy tale wedding. But the proposal is still a definite highlight.
I would say that day was one of the happiest days of my life.
Yeah!
Next to our wedding day and getting our dog.
Oh my God!